Welcome to the world of Steel Tank. I'd like to do a video here on the strategy for survival mode. I'm going to be using one of these smaller tanks, the Panzer III. It has most of the upgrades. I've found if I do not go with the complete steering upgrade, it handles much better. It can handle wonkily if you go with full upgrade of the steering. So let's get started in survival mode. How about we start a battle?
Ready.
We'll head to the battlefield here. Take a little peek around. Notice a red arrow just popped on the screen. That's pointing towards an enemy.
Here I am.
I am doing something a little odd with this tank. It does not have the firepower to do this with one shot. I am shooting out his turret, which makes it somewhat difficult for him to aim at us. Unlike when our turret is out, it spins freely. The enemy's tank just locks into position, which means he has to drive around
Orders.
something like a tank killer without any wobbling of his gun, be able to aim at us. And they tend always to be moving. This strategy allows me to clean up the battlefield some. The trees don't matter a whole lot to the enemy or to... I have actually got a teammate. I call him companion tank. Usually I just call him Doofus because he does not get much in the way of algorithms. He gets some. He does go into defensive mode on occasion. He'll just charge at the enemy at other times. He'll hide out and hardly be any use on the battlefield. However,
Sir, yes, sir.
should he be between us and the enemy will try to target him, and that comes in particularly handy if he's in some sort of a fortification. Because if we are behind our teammate, we get shots
One shot.
at the enemy without the enemy shooting at us, or without the enemy shooting at us too much when I take out his turret.
Position.
Now, the first wave of tanks that comes at us only has two tanks. They're the smaller tanks available in the game. As the game progresses, there'll be more tanks in each wave up until there's about 12 tanks in a wave. There's usually two more tanks, or one more tank, one more tank than the wave number. I don't know, at some point around wave 8 or so, there may not hold true to that rule. But by about then, you don't really get much of a chance to count the number of tanks on the battlefield, because they're fairly fast tanks. The game speeds up some when that happens. It's why it's advantageous to wipe out the trees on the battlefield before you get to the upper level of the waves. By taking out these, it allows you to sight in on the enemy better, because if you hit the zoom now, you cannot see the enemy. Or you cannot see him very well. You may be able to see him with the targeting mechanism saying you've got him targeted. I just managed to hit him in the turret, luckily. Take out his turret. Gives us less chance of him diminishing our armor. They do have a lower rate of firepower than our tanks. It seems to be somewhere around half or a third. However, their fire rate will vary as you progress through the game. And you notice I did not hit him in the green part where I was aiming. That will happen quite often due to the accuracy of your tank. Tanks with higher accuracy do better. Ones with longer tracks do better because You don't have to stay still as long to get it to hit your target. Here they're both on top of Doofus, so let's take them out and we'll go on to another wave with more tanks. Now, getting back to trees. The enemy can see around them quite easily. It doesn't mean his shot is going to hit you all the time. If you're firing at an enemy or the enemy is firing at you, it can get stopped by a tree. It will take out the tree. The enemy just fires whenever he's got an opportunity, whatever's in the way, whether it's a building, a rock, or a tree. His shell may get stopped by any of those. However, he is able to target you very well, and so is your teammate, able to target the enemy through groups of trees. The trees do vary quite a bit, not only in the shape of the tree, the size of the tree. There are some parts where it is very dense. There are other parts where there are very few trees. And there's also, you can see way off in the distance over straight ahead there, and way back up the hill up there, that is part of one big battlefield. There's only one big battlefield in this game. I have yet to come across where part is cordoned off. There do not get the whole battlefield or battle area as a battlefield for each and every time you go into a mission in this game. There's a section, not an overly small section, that gets cordoned off. There's an orange fence around it. I just backed into the orange fence. I can see where the whole battlefield goes here. As you can see, there's quite an area beyond the orange fence. All that area is not available for play. Most of it is. So there is a lot of variety in the battlefield in this game. And you'll notice there is an option to come up with some strategy, whether you want to get up on hills. You can shoot. I'm shooting quite a ways across what is available to us today. And Doofus looks like he's got a bunch of tanks around him. There's a problem with Doofus. He does not target the tank that is firing at him. Neither does the enemy. They seem to target whichever one is closest. It's not a hard and fast rule. There are some tanks that will actually target you when you're not the closest. Some of the T-34s are a good example of that. And you notice I'm shooting at the sides of the tank for the most part. They have weaker armor there. I am using a small tank. I've got a very good fire rate, which allows me to participate in the game. But it doesn't allow me to do a lot of damage. I would not want to shoot at a Cromwell's turret. It would take me about 5 shots to damage his turret to make it inoperable.
Let's go.
And it takes me 2 with this tank, which is even less powerful in firepower than the beginner tank, although it does have a better fire density due to its high fire rate, which is the firepower times the number of rounds it can get off. Now you notice we're on wave 6 here. We're up against some T-34s, which it just took me 3 shots to go through his front armor. I put a shot into him. You notice the red bar across him. It went down substantially. That is his core defense. I just took out the rest of his core defense by putting a shot through a hole in his armor, essentially. And I just did the same with a Cromwell. Fortunately, I got 2 shots into his back, which is the only weak spot on a Cromwell. They have pretty good armor. Now, when we get to more higher up in the wave numbers here, if we get to them, we're going to come up against some tanks. The M18, which has the firepower of the T-34s there, but has a much faster fire rate. It is very maneuverable. See what I was telling you about intervening things being in the way? The enemy just hit a rock. And it does help if you keep your tank moving some. It makes his accuracy a little less, or the likelihood that he'll hit something intervening. Okay. Now you notice it's a great big building area here. I call this one of the industrial areas. There's 3 industrial areas available in the whole battle area. I just hit Doofus, my teammate. Fortunately, I don't do any damage to him, and the enemy tanks don't do any damage to their own tanks when they hit them. Same team either. Now, it would have taken me 2 shots to go through. There's an M18 there. It would have taken me 2 shots to go through his side or 2 shots to go through his front. I'm usually better off going through the front on one of those tanks because quite often they will try to point towards you, because that is where their strongest armor is usually. I'm betting my teammate's already dead. Take a quick peek around. He's not behind me. He's not behind me. My teammate is dead. How about, as a defensive strategy, I try to go into this. Oh, I don't have enough of the industrial area to go into. That's not good.
In position. Here I am.
First shot hit him in the side. Oh, great. I am not going to go that way. Looks like we've had it. And you can see the payout there is about 3,000, just under 3,000. I find that's usually about what we can do with this tank in survival mode. It's about the same level, or actually it's about 10% less or so, usually with the starter tank. This is the fastest way of making currency in the game, is by going into survival mode. So I hope I told you a little bit about strategy and survival mode while we were there, with bigger tanks that have more firepower, such as this one. Whoops. Either the T-34s, this is a smaller T-34, the M18, the larger T-34, which you should be able to eventually get to. They have much higher firepower. With one shell, you can take out turrets through a few waves of tanks. If you really need to take out turrets on tanks, you want to get to this tank, but you'll be well into the game by the time you're able to get this tank. It's not worth trying to use in-game purchases to buy any of these tanks. It would cost a fortune to buy them and upgrade them. So I hope that helps you out with World of Steel Tank Force by BraveTale.